for a long time, many of those final years, my mom was sleeping on the couch in the living room, dad was in the bedroom. Like for a long time, we could sense as children and getting old as young men that they had fallen out of love, right, for a long time. But they remained together for a long time. I remember them arguing about money and those kinds of things. Right. They remained together for my brother and I. That was important to them. So by the time that my mom was ready to file for that divorce, I understood. And so I think when my dad and mom came to us, my brother and I, and said, we're going to be getting a divorce, I think they expected a different sort of response and reaction from us. But at that point, I think we understood. And what we told them was like, well, maybe this is best for both of you.
This is a journey.
Let me take you on a journey.
There will still be the journey.
The journey.
New sheriff in town, and his name is
The journey.
Journey.
This thing is bigger than Nino Brown. This is the journey.
The journey.
What is it that moved you?
The journey. The journey. The journey. The journey.
The Journey Memphis is being generously supported by Nike's Black Community Commitment and Methodist Labanner Healthcare. Welcome back to another episode of The Journey. I'm your host, Larry Robinson, and today I promise you we will not let you down as it relates to the great, great people that we have coming here before you. Before we get there, though, let's check out our quote of the show. It comes from the great novelist, writer, storyteller, James Baldwin. And it goes a little something like this. If you know whence you came, there is really no limit to where you can go. If you know where you came from, you can go as far as you need to go to be successful. Now to our guests. We have Jason Smith. He's a JK, what we call a journalist kid, sports fanatic, proud and committed father, as well as a definite committed son. So without further ado, we have Brother Jason Smith. What's up, Jason?
What's up, Brother Robinson?
How you doing, man?
Good to be here, man.
Good,
I appreciate
man. We're glad to
me,
have
man.
you.
Dude, it's an absolute pleasure and an honor to be here with you.
Oh,
a man
man.
who's been a mentor for me and who's been a great deal to my career. So I'm coming here thanking you.
Oh, wow. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's
but this
no
is
smoke.
all about you, brother. This is your journey. So the first question I got for you, tell me about the house you were raised in. What was the dynamic like?
Midtown Memphis. It was actually an apartment off of Stonewall and Poplar.
Wait a minute, that ain't when you got to Memphis. You got to Memphis, you was from Florida.
Well, Fort Pierce, Florida, first grade, kindergarten, those kind of
Okay,
things. Yeah,
well,
I mean, back
Go ahead.
then, that was my father moving up the media ladder, and we were in Fort Pierce, Florida for about a year.
Okay.
Had moved there from Kansas City.
Okay.
So second grade, early 80s, about 83 was the time I got here. I guess about 6 years old, 5 years old. And for the most of my upbringing, after being around the beach for about a year down in Florida, was in Midtown Memphis. Ain't no water except Adventure River around, and so it was quite a for a 5 or 6 year old, it was quite a change. But then Midtown Memphis, apartment in Memphis, as my dad was working his way up through local media.
Okay, and where'd you go to high school?
High school was White Station High School after Stoughton Junior High.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. So who outside of your parents had the most influence or impact on young Jason?
That's a great question. I would probably say my teachers.
Really?
Definitely. Because I'll tell you this, Larry, coming up in predominantly black Memphis as a mixed kid, black dad, but my mom was white.
Okay.
There was a lot of trying to figure out, okay, which side of the tracks do I belong to? And it was happening right here in Memphis where, again, my school when I first started out, predominantly black. Obviously it was at Roselle Elementary before Snowden.
Right.
And so back to the point, for me, finding out, where do I belong was a lot of my upbringing, and my teachers were absolutely vital in that.
Really?
I think because they saw a young man struggling socially to find out what his clique was. Hey, am I going to be with these white guys because my mom's white? I can relate to those guys. Or am I going to be with these black guys that I look more like, that are actually relating to me, talking to me and frankly in a Memphis way that I hadn't heard before. but clearly they think I'm one of them. Back then, I mean, I had the nappy hair and everything. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't like your typical mixed kid who's got the straight laced stuff. They're saying you like one of us. And so long story short, my teachers who I think saw a young man trying to figure it out came to me and said, man, stop trying to be one thing or other, just be yourself. And I know that's cliche advice that a lot of us got from our grandmothers and parents and everything else, but it really was those teachers, taking time to say, we see you struggling a little bit, just be yourself and stop worrying so much about where you belong.
Cool.
Yeah.
Who did you want to be as a kid, man?
I wanted to be an archaeologist, believe it or not. Man, must have been the white side in me, Larry. I wanted to be Indiana Jones, is what I wanted to be. Yeah, Harrison Ford and them Indiana Jones movies had me want to go out, search for treasure, fossils, dinosaur bones, and all that. Growing up, I was dead set on being an archaeologist, and I had decided that the University of Chicago, I had looked it up, had this great archaeology program that I was eventually going to go off into. And man, I tell you what, I held on to that dream probably until about middle of high school. I said, you know what, that ain't going to get me anywhere. You can't be a black Indiana Jones or a mixed one.
So what decision did you make as a young person that ended up having an impact on you and having a lifelong impact, but you didn't know it at the time? What?
I think that's a great question. I think it was realizing that I was a follower. Maybe for the reasons that we just talked about, always sort of searching for what my group was, but in that, realizing that rather than leading and blazing my own path, I was looking for someone to lead me. And so whether it was, and those are longer stories, but whether it was my failures or whatever else, eventually I realized I've got to lead my own path. Now it took me so much time to realize that you can't be a follower if you're going to get to where you want to go.
Was there a moment? Was there a moment that you said, you know what, I can't do this?
Well, I'll be real honest with you. It was a moment, probably my lowest moment, where had an issue with drinking. And a lot of that was, again, socially. It's what my friends are doing and everything else. Been drawn into that because everyone else was a lot like a follower mentality. And I'll be real honest with you. It's a story I've told in a testimony at church. A week before my son was born, I'm in the Shelby County Jail serving 48 hours for a DUI. And so even at that point in my life, now I'm in the workforce and everything else, I realized that because of that follower mentality that I had, trying to find whatever it was, I'd put myself in a situation where I may very well miss the birth of my son. Now, God was good. I was able to do those 48 hours, get out a week later, my son's being born. But similar to maybe some of the stories you've heard here on the journey, I told myself in that moment, no more following, no more drinking in that instance, because it had put me in a place I didn't want to be, in a place that was potentially damaging to my family. And so it was that moment, I'll be real honest with you, Larry, where with God's help, I decided, you know what, I'm no longer following, whether it's socially someone or trying to climb a ladder in terms of professionally. If I'm gonna follow God. And thank God, a then developing relationship that got stronger helped me kick the alcohol and go from following to, more serving than anything else.
I got you. When did you know you were going to be okay? At what point in your life did you say, you know what, I can do this thing called life?
It was after teaching Bible studies to a group of kids. I've never been more intimidated by a job, having no relationship with God coming up, but then trying to walk into it. That was intimidating. Going into a black church those first few times, that was intimidating. I've changed jobs, that's intimidating. But I've never been more intimidated than I was when my pastor asked me, when he thought I was ready, to lead a youth Bible study. Because while I did, Larry, have a great upbringing, 2-parent household, I wasn't raised in a church, so I didn't have, and maybe this goes back to sort of that follower mentality, I didn't have a relationship, a foundation, a relationship with God. And so when I was able to talk to a bunch of 9 or 10, 8, 9, even some even younger than that, 5 and 4-year-olds, and talk about God not having any relationship, but being put in that position. First thing I did was sweat, because what these kids are going to know the Bible better than me. All that. What's God doing right here? Why am I the one that's in this position? Never saw myself leading a Bible study. But it's funny, Larry, just in you asking that question, when I got done with the first one, I've never felt more fulfilled, whether it's professional life, socially, marrying my wife, everything else, than being in that spot, because God had taken literally a wretch, somebody who at one time was called an atheist when he was young. He was so, and it just didn't have any relationship whatsoever with God. God had taken me, and to me, shown me a miracle that, brother, you can do this.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And not only can you, this is what I want you to be doing. So I knew I was all right once I was comfortable enough to talk about my faith, whether it was with, my family or with a group of kids who were learning, because to me, that's the most important job. Like, if you can pour that sort of foundation and faith and support, a relationship with God, into a child, something I didn't have, bro, that's as good as it gets in terms of life achievement. So that's when I knew I was okay, when I was teaching Bible studies and trying to spread God's love.
Okay. Last question of this segment. Every brother has a point where they realize they are a black man. What was that moment for you?
Probably early.
Hold on. Listen, we're going to be right back on the journey. My brother Jason is going to talk about the moment that he realized he was a brother. Stay right there. Be right back after this.
This is a journey.
Let me take you on a journey.
Success in life is not a straight line. There are twists and turns in everyone's life, and the more you know about their story, the more you'll understand the process. Kazuki Media Group proudly presents The Journey, a show that features successful black men in Memphis telling their stories of their lives and the ups and downs they've encountered on their ultimate road to success. We believe The Journey will encourage young men and help them see that life is a journey. Watch The Journey, hosted by me, Larry Robinson. Brought to you by the Kazuki Media Group in partnership with the Delta Boulay. Welcome back to The Journey. I'm your host, Larry Robinson, and today we got an amazing guest, an amazing Memphis icon, Brother Jason Smith. So Jason, before we left, I asked you, what was that moment that you knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that you were a black man?
My grandmother told me at a very young age that, and this is my paternal grandmother, my dad's mom, black woman, had been raised in Chicago, moved to Missouri, and she told me very early, before I even understood it, that because you have black blood in you, I want you to know, grandson, that you are black. And at the time, in terms of the impact, I didn't really understand the conversation. Again, you're talking about a kid who's got a white mom, and is being told he's black. Didn't understand it, but she let me know there. You asked me though when I realized it. It was in elementary school here in Memphis, Tennessee.
Okay.
Because again, once I was in school and at a predominantly black school, I had my peers, my fellow students, the black kids, looking at me as if I was one of them. Okay. And so there was no longer any, okay, well, what are you? They thought, whether it was my hair or whatever else, and I had, like I said, I had regular curly hair like they did, they thought I was black rather than a mixed kid. And again, we had mixed kids in our class that had straighter hair, and those kids would make fun of. When I got there though, again, they thought I was a light-skinned black kid. And so once they started, and I'll be real honest with you, my mother knew not the first thing about taking care of black hair, which is what I had. My dad was too busy working to worry about taking care of his black sons. And so when my nappy, small little afro in elementary school was getting checked left and right, that's when I knew, bro, I got black hair, I'm black. You know what I'm saying? These people, these folks have accepted me as one of them, and they let me know I need to do something with my hair. So I don't, with all due respect and love to my white mother, who to the 73 years old, still alive, and God bless her, everything she tried to do with my hair. It was then when I realized I got black hair that I need to get into somebody's barbershop and get chopped up. When I realized, you know what, this is how I'm going to be identified the rest of my life by others. And frankly, it's it's how I feel the most comfortable identifying. And so that was when it was those school years where they told me, bro, you black and you need to get to a barbershop.
Wow. All right, so let's talk about the early years of the household. Siblings, mother, father, what does it look like?
Mother, father, both in the household. Like I said, black father in Memphis media, white mother who was working, basically a housewife until later on. Yeah, we were but again, small apartment, Midtown Memphis, had a younger brother and it was just us.
Okay.
My dad had been one of 5 brothers who had moved out, had ventured out of this small town called Fulton, Missouri.
Okay.
After growing up in Chicago, they had moved to Missouri.
Okay.
These 5 brothers and their mom, and all of them stayed. There's a small town of 11,000, about 30 miles or so from Columbia, where the University of Missouri is. They all were raised there, but my dad was the one who left and got out, and that's, actually started in country music radio, black man country music radio, if you can believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah, him and Charlie Pride. There weren't many of them back then, and he was a black disc jockey doing country music radio was his start, but he comes up, works his way into television, those kinds of things. And so anyway, we're moved to Memphis, early 80s, and he's moved away from his Missouri family. We mentioned we moved down to Florida for a year, then found a home in Memphis in the early 80s, and it was just us, the 4 of us, mom, dad, and my brother Jeff, who was a year and a half younger than I am, growing up again in Midtown Memphis, and a lot of it just kind of, wow, this new place and in the South, and just trying to feel our way through. So that was it. I mean, growing up in Midtown, went to Snowden Junior High and then on to White Station. A pretty normal childhood and upbringing that included white friends, black friends, a little bit of everything.
So now your dad's wife of today is that your mom?
No.
Okay.
Now he got remarried later on in life. I guess I was in my late teens when my mom and dad divorced after 22 years.
So what kind of impact
That's a great
did that have on a young Jason?
I thought that marriage wasn't going to last. I thought that marriage couldn't last, that it didn't last, that if 2 people after 22 years had decided after all that time, right, that they were going to get a divorce, that the likelihood was, why would I get married? Because of what if in 20 or 30 years, we haven't made it work to a point where I'm getting a divorce. No, it had a huge impact. Even though my mom and dad stayed together long enough for my brother and I to get to an age where we understood.
Right.
For a long time, many of those final years, my mom was sleeping on the couch in the living room, dad was in the bedroom. Like for a long time, we could sense as children and getting old as young men that they had fallen out of love, right, for a long time. But they remained together for a long time. I remember them arguing about money and those kinds of things. They remained together for my brother and I. That was important to them. So by the time that my mom was ready to file for that divorce, I understood. And so I think when my dad and mom came to us, my brother and I, and said, we're going to be getting a divorce, I think they expected a different sort of response and reaction from us. But at that point, I think we understood. And what we told them was like, well, maybe this is best for both of you. It was sort of, we had reached a point in our lives where we were able to understand it in that way. And you know what, to be out of love that long, that's a hard life that you live. I think about my wife.
They loved you guys and wanted to create an environment.
100%. And so in the end, I couldn't do anything but, the fact that couldn't do anything but salute them and thank them that they had done that for us, because we were old enough to understand. It really was. It could have been so much more detrimental in terms of what I might have gone through as a kid or the way I'd looked at things if it had happened earlier on in my life. But we understood it well enough, and later on I was able to put down, what happened to my mom and dad, and what happened to the moms and dads of a lot of my friends who were being raised by one parent or the other. To realize, that doesn't necessarily have to be the case for me.
Absolutely. Yeah. Young man, Midtown Memphis. Tell me about a fond memory of being raised in Midtown.
Wow. We had what was so crazy about Midtown was that to the left of us, if you went further down Stonewall, there were much nicer houses. We were in an apartment at Poplar and Stonewall. Almaduras there, which are nice set of apartments. We were a little bit further down in some cheaper apartments. But if you went right across Poplar, you could throw a rock to the nicer houses, right? If you kept on walking down Stonewall, you'd be in North Memphis, okay, where everything, doesn't look the same as it did between Stonewall and between Poplar and North Parkway. And so I say that to say, and even behind our apartment, behind Stonewall, there was a huge, rich Vietnamese population in Midtown behind us. And so we had Vietnamese friends coming up in Midtown, and that was my fondest memory, is that being in Midtown, I was exposed to all kinds of different cultures. And maybe that's why I was running around so much trying to figure out, okay, which one of them am I? Which one am I going to relate to the most? Which group do I fall in? Because we literally had everything, and we had it at our apartment. All my friends would come over to our apartment in Midtown, and I think that was my fondest memory of Midtown Memphis, was that it was a melting pot, much like we talk about this country. Midtown is that. Now, it's changed quite a bit than it was, back in those early 80s and 90s when I was coming through there. But one thing that's still the same is you will see everything.
Everybody.
You will see all walks.
That's what
in
I love
Midtown
about
Memphis.
living in Midtown.
100%.
It's everything.
It's everything, and it's right there for you. And so we were exposed to so much, and it was great for me because whether it was, again, relating to somebody that I don't share the same culture with or whatever else, it just exposed me to a lot that I felt like was beneficial. I realized later on in my life, super beneficial in terms of relationships with folks, being able to get along with folks that I may not stay or have preconceived notions about. That was the best thing about growing in Midtown, is, man, it was all there for you. You had friends everywhere.
Now I realized that, maybe the DUI was a horrible thing in your life, but I want to go back to childhood. What was one of those not so fond memories? One of those memories of a fight or something that you like, man, that was a ugly, horrible day.
I struggled with. I told you about the hair, and there, I got some rough comments about, before I finally got a fade, high top fade. Got some, and I remember coming to school that day after I got my first real haircut, black haircut, got the high top fade, and it was like it was slow motion walking down the hall. All the girls was turning and all that.
Who's that?
I had finally found myself.
That sounds like a fond memory to me.
But that was fun, and that's where I was going. At this same school, though, at Snowden, I used to have a huge, and still do struggle with it at times, but now that I'm in radio, it doesn't matter. I had a huge acne issue, zits, man. They used to call me pizza face in middle school coming up. And so I was just so self-conscious about it. I don't know what it was, just had real sensitive skin, and back then it razor bumps, all that stuff, but just real sensitive skin. Kids with acne, man, they go through all kinds of stuff, but it was there where, whether it was me being talked about, whatever else, I got into a fight over it with a brother named Quintus Bishop, who went on to become a pretty good football player at Snowden and then over at Central High School. Quintus had called me pizza face. So I was done, Larry. I'm going to fight for the first time over at Snowden I guess this was as a 7th grader. Man, yeah, I took the L. I'd won I'd gone into that thing saying I'm going to put my dukes up, and Quintus Bishop, I've told this story before, taught me about Memphis City School fight, is that your square tail might think you coming in here and you're going to put your dukes up, but you realize that there are no rules in Memphis City School fights. And so as soon as I put my dukes up, Quintus was kicking me, grabbing me, and everything else, and I realized, man, ain't no rules to this in fight. This man is from North Memphis. And so, in front of just about everybody in our PE class, man, I got embarrassed, and I probably, like I said, I needed it.
How did you handle the next day?
Oh, it was rough. I think I got my dad to call into school for me and tell me I had a stomach ache. I think I remember not going to school the next day because of that fight. Yeah, I took that one, and I'll tell you what, I was involved in very few fights after that, because I realized, bro, you ain't
cut out for that.
And it ain't just gonna be boxing, man. We talking about fighting in Memphis City School. So that was probably one of the low points. That, and man, getting jumped at White Station as a senior by a bunch of freshmen.
You got jumped
in an intramural basketball game, man.
Oh wow! By a bunch of freshmen.
Now I got one of them, but only one.
The
one that fell on the ground. I was stomping, and the rest of them were. Yeah, man, got an intramural basketball, White Station, and they called the game after I fouled a guy hard. Terry Tippett, the coach, longtime coach, and got called the game, so we're not having any fighting. So the team that's up, y'all win. We were the team that was up.
Okay.
I'm walking off. I go to my little girlfriend to get my chain back. As soon as I grab my chain, man, I'm getting beat over the head by these ninth graders from Magnolia Heights.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and one of them had fallen, and I said, man, if these folks whoop me blind, I'm still gonna get this one. And so basically losing fights in school in Memphis were some of my low points there. Since you want to bring me on down, Larry, and take me back there.
Well, no, it's for the kids, man. The
No, it
kids
is.
need to know
They know.
you wasn't 10 and 0.
Well, just know that just know that you can come out 0-2 and still be okay. You can come out having lost all your fights and still be okay in life. You ain't gotta don't have to focus so much on winning all of them.
What was it like to transition to adulthood, man? You went to college, Tennessee State.
Tennessee
right?
State in '94, coming out of White Station.
So you went to Tennessee State, and how was that experience?
It was an educational experience in the sense of much more than books. It was not understanding, sort of how blessed and lucky I was. Had earned a presidential scholarship out of White Station. Mm-hmm. I was rooming with my best friend, Toby, who was in the band up there at TSU.
Right.
He's my best friend, even despite the fact that people telling me the old college things, you don't don't be roommates with your best friend.
Right.
We weren't worried about that. I didn't apply anywhere else to
Really?
school once Tennessee State had sent that letter.
Wasn't
concerned at all. And I said, well, this is going to make mom and dad happy, so what do I need to apply anywhere else for?
Right.
Get up there, and a story I've told many times, had blown that scholarship after the first semester. Again,
Wait a minute. You went to Tennessee State,
94.
and you were out of there in one semester?
Out of there in one semester.
What did you do?
Stopped going to class. I think you had to maintain a 2.0, and I had stopped going to class, got up there, and got turned out, like I've said, by those majorettes, the historically black band, just being in the whole
You
of
went up
those
there
games.
and partied.
I went up there and partied. And I had been so square coming out of White Station that I had no idea that something like that might happen. But you hear all the tales now, the guys that get that little taste of freedom, some of them wild out and lose it. And that was the thing about Tennessee State, was the thing that the girls make it, but the guys come up there, get a little bit of freedom and don't. Now, in defense of Tennessee State, many of my friends, several of them, and I still shake their hands to this day, finished up there at Tennessee State. Didn't need to leave, did just fine 4 years. So that old,
So wait a minute, they didn't put you on probation or anything? They just sent you home?
Well, no, the school put me on probation for the second semester, and instead of my mom and dad paying for it, they said, no, son, you're going to come home. Frankly, they let me know they had not set any money to the side. I hadn't planned on it. It was an academic scholarship, and they had planned on me being done in 4 years.
Right.
They didn't have any money, but more importantly, their point was, well, no, you're going to learn the hard way. You're going to come back home after that winter of 1994, and you're going to find a job, and you'll figure it out from there. But at this point, if you're going to be in our house, which I still needed to be, obviously, at that point in my life, you're going to have to find a job or be in school. And so at that point, chose odd jobs, trying to figure it out. It took me about 5 years of framing houses, security guard, tried to find, what am I going to do? And that's when I realized I don't need a job. That's not me. Look at these soft hands. I can't be a construction. Let me try to go get a profession. And went back in 1999. So almost 5 years after I had screwed up at TSU, I'm back in college at the University of Memphis in the fall of 1999.
Have any problems once you went back?
No problems at all. I was able to cruise through. I mean, I was an older student at that point, much more mature, wiser at that point, so I was able to cruise through in 3 years, come out in 2002, and then thankfully in 2003, a year later, the Commercial Appeal came and hired me as a sports writer, and my sort of professional career started from there. So
wait a minute, you followed right in your dad's footsteps.
Yeah.
Did you know you were going to follow in your dad's footsteps?
I had intended when I went back to school in 1999 over at Memphis to go into television like Dad.
Okay.
That was my plan, but I met a guy you've heard me tell the story of Jerome Wright. He was a great Memphian.
Shout out to Jerome.
Former Neighbors editor, former editor over at the Commercial Appeal. He was teaching a media writing class over at the University of Memphis.
Okay.
And basically convinced me that you will be better as a storyteller in newspapers and print media rather than than television media. And I bought it hook, line, and sinker because his point was, well, with television you have such little time to tell your story.
Right.
Come with me, come to newspapers, and you can tell your stories in a much longer and more explorative fashion.
Right.
And he was right when I first got there.
Okay.
But little did we know at that time, was 2000 or so, that the newspaper business was about to undergo some great change, layoffs, the entire business changed. And so when I got in 2003, it was one thing. We had a sports department that was robust with writers. We had double-digit writers up there. By the time I moved on, dude, I had seen guys around me get laid off. We had a sports department more of about 4 or 5. You know the deal. Immediately, everything's downsized. Advertising is now, how can we get it on the internet as opposed to in a print edition? The paper even got physically smaller. But that said, because I know that that's the path I needed to go. I thank Jerome to this day for talking me into that print part of my career.
Now we're coming to the end of this, but I want to ask you. You're walking in the door. I want you to envision this. You're walking in the door of the house in Midtown that you were raised. Sitting at the table eating a bowl of cereal is young Jason Smith. What would you say to that kid?
I would say stop worrying about who you are, and I'll be real honest with you, Larry. I would take that kid by the hand and I'd take him to church. Again, there are times where I've resented my mom and dad for not giving me that foundation, because there have been so many times in my life where I've been looking, and I felt like now, if I had just had more of a relationship with God, one I'm trying to instill in my son now at a very young age, that so many of those questions that I was asking myself, so much of that worrying and anxiety would have been gone. And so if I'm talking to that Jason at the table, I would tell him, man, through whatever means necessary, if it's me having to take you there, and I know it's tough because you don't have parents that are taking you, get a relationship with God, with a higher power, because it can be a support system. It can be a miracle worker for you if you believe enough. And I didn't get that until so much later. So if little Jason had it earlier, I just felt there, a lot of the worrying, the crying about what do I, which group I join, what about my hair. I just feel like, does it go all the way? No, but I'm better able to deal with it. So I would tell that little guy, man, whatever you got to do, man, just try to get closer to God. Get that relationship.
Okay, well, we're at the end, and there's gonna be all kind of boys, young people checking out this show, this one right here, your episode. I would like you to look in that camera and leave them, those that are listening and watching, with a Jason Smithism.
I would say this, young folks, don't let those crabs pull you back down in the barrel. When you know what you want to do, go do it. But what's going to happen when you do that is you're going to have friends, you're going to have acquaintances that see you find your passion, see you on a path, and they're going to try to pull you off. They're going to tell you ain't good enough. They're going to tell you, no, you're doing the wrong thing. Do not listen to those crabs in that barrel trying to pull you back down. Keep climbing up that barrel, because too many times, Larry, especially in Memphis, Tennessee, we let those crabs pull us back down, and it keeps us from reaching our fullest potential. We listen to them. We start believing we're not good enough. We start believing maybe this is the wrong choice. Find that passion, find that purpose, and crawl out of that barrel. Don't let them crabs pull you back down in it. Because in Memphis, I guarantee you, they will try to do so. Don't let them.
If you know whence you've came, there is really no limit to where you can go. That's James Baldwin, and that's how we started it out. Beautiful. And it sounds like, brother, you have figured out from who you are and from whence you've come.
Took a long time, Larry, and it took having guys like you in my life, for God putting gentlemen like you in my life for me to get there. So I appreciate you as well, and appreciate you for having me.
And what an honor. Brother, thank you.
Mine, brother.
Thank you.
Real
Thank
talk.
you so much.
Yep.
Listen, this is the journey. I told you, we're going to keep bringing them. You just got to keep showing up as well. Till the next time, I'm Larry Robinson. For our guest, Jason Smith. Peace. Thank you to our partners at Nike's Black Community Commitment and Methodist Labanner Healthcare. To hear more incredible stories like this, be sure to download the Kazukian app from the App Store or Google Play, or check out the Journey Memphis podcast on all your major podcast providers. Also, check us out on the Kazukian Network.